Hey Mama, welcome to episode 7 of What's the Plan? Personal Growth for Busy Moms. My name is Sharon and I am a busy mom that is so excited that you are here. So we're going to go ahead and dive into today's topic. I am super excited about it. Today we're going to be discussing how to design your ideal day as a busy mom. And yes, that is possible. Now, don't get me wrong. My ideal day, similar to yours, I'm sure, would probably involve some sort of iced beverage on a beach by ourselves. Do you feel that? And while that would be the ideal day we're going to be talking about today is within the context of our current reality. So like you, I'm sure, my current reality involves being a working mom. I am married to my husband of 10 years. And we have 2 girls together. We have a house, we have dogs and a cat and all the things. So there are definitely some constraints, if you will, on my schedule. But I want to use that as sort of like the parameters for designing my ideal life. I like to go through this exercise about once a year where I sort of scrap my entire schedule and start from the beginning. And I think through what I would want my ideal day to be, what kind of schedule I would want to have, and then I really try really hard to implement it. This is something that I started doing in one of my life coaching programs. I'm currently working with Brian Johnson through Optimize, and he calls these our masterpiece days. So with his inspiration, I've been inspired to sort of like create that awesome day where you're just like excited about everything that happened. And if you follow your schedule exactly, which we don't always do, but if you follow your schedule exactly, you sort of hit all those priorities and you're just really excited about everything you were able to accomplish that day when you maximized your energy, not necessarily maximizing or managing your time, if that makes sense. So let's walk through how to do this. It's actually a lot of fun. I like really geek out about managing time and schedules. It's really interesting to me. And I have read a lot about it. And this is sort of the process the system that I've created to create that ideal day for myself. So the first thing that I do is I do a brain dump about what I want my ideal day to look like. That can look a different form for a different person. So for me, I prefer to just like write a paragraph or write, I just get a Google Doc and I write out what my ideal day would be. First, I would do this. For breakfast, we would do this, and then after breakfast, we would do this. Like, it just works for me. I've always been a writer. I like to see it kind of long form. You could do the same thing in a list. You could write out your current schedule. You could go on Pinterest and create like a Pinterest board of things that you would like to do during your ideal day. You could create just like a vision board if that floated your boat of just like, Google images. Something that inspired you if that works for you. But any one of those methods just used to like get all the ideas out of your head and onto paper. That's a great starting point. Your next step, once you've done the brain dump, is to really look at or to write down your current schedule. So if you work, like I used to be a full-time teacher. So I had to leave the house at 7 a.m. My workday started at 8 a.m. and then I couldn't leave till 4 p.m. Those were time constraints that were on my schedule. So I would write those down and then build other activities in around there. If you are a stay-at-home mom, your schedule may look very different. You may have like drop-offs, pickups of kiddos to do. You may have after-school activities. Try to think about just sort of like a generic day though. Don't get overwhelmed by like, well, on Mondays we have karate and Wednesdays are swimming. Like, don't do that to yourself. Not right now. We're just thinking about kind of like that generic ideal day, probably a weekday, since you have a little more control over that schedule generally, and go from there. Your next step is to look at your time blocks. So when I was working full time, I would look at my time block as, I taught in the morning from, 8:30, I think the kids walked in the door, and then there was a break at 10:45. We'd have meetings and stuff, but I usually had a few minutes at that 10:45 time where I could insert something for myself, whether it was like having lunch with a colleague or I was doing a photography class for a while. I would let myself do a module during my lunch while I ate, like that kind of thing. So think about your schedule, think about your time blocks, Now, as a work from home mom, I am a family photographer that has control over my schedule, also a life coach, have control over my schedule. So I usually have, I take a morning work block and an afternoon work block, and then I've got a time block during lunch that I like to optimize to make sure I'm getting outside, getting some exercise, all of those things. So let's review the process thus far. First step, brain dump. Second step, write out your current schedule. And then third step, identify time blocks in your day where you could arguably insert something that makes it feel closer to that ideal life that you are trying to build, right, out of these days. So now you want to work backwards. How can you make these things happen? So let's say that you decide that you want to start working out. And right now it's not in your schedule at all, and you want to change that. As we discussed in episode 6, you need a system here, not a goal. Your system is going to be what brings you to your goal. So let's say you want to work out because you want to lose 10 pounds. Losing 10 pounds is your goal. Your system is to work out. So you need to break that down. And this is where a lot of people exit the video. This is the hard part. This is the work that people don't want to do, but you really need to force yourself to think through this. Okay, I'm going to work out. When am I going to do that? Let's say, all right, I'm going to do it during my lunch break. I'm going to walk 2 miles during my lunch break at work. Perfect. That is the beginning of a system. So my questions for you would be, how are you going to make sure that you have everything you need? So you don't want to get to work and realize you didn't bring your socks. It's the worst because you were going to do it and then you can't because you don't have your socks. So what system could you have backup socks in your car? I can't believe we're talking about backup socks. How are you going to make sure your sneakers get to school every day? Are you going to wear a pedometer to make sure that you're getting the number of steps in that you want? What if it rains? What's the rain plan? Is there a place you can walk indoors? I used to do this during my lunch break as a teacher. People made fun of me all the time. I would just put on my sneakers and walk inside the building during the winter just because it was a place to walk and it got my steps in. So think about what your system is. Maybe that's not going to work for you. You're like, my work day is bonkers. I don't have time to walk during lunch. I'm going to do a cardio workout in the morning at 5 a.m. Awesome. You just added 2 systems there. The early morning wake up and the working out. So having to really break that up to make your decisions ahead of time. Kendra over at The Lazy Genius, who I strongly recommend following, talks about really breaking things up into the smallest piece and make decisions once. So for the workout example, if you decide you're going to work out in the morning, I would say, okay, so what time are you setting your alarm for? Decide, set it, done. Okay, when you wake up, what workout are you going to do? I do Beachbody home workouts every morning. I decide at the beginning of every 8 weeks, I pick my program, decide once, done. Where am I going to work out? I work out in the living room every morning by myself. My husband works out in the basement. We cannot work out in the same room. It drives me nuts. He breathes too loud. So you have to make these decisions once, and then you have developed your system. And that's how, friends, you get to your ideal day. It's not all just kind of like that fantasy piece. It's like breaking it down into those little building blocks to then rebuild it back up. So again, I try to do the system about once a year or whenever my schedule changes drastically. When I'm recording this, it's March. I'm sure I'm going to have another pretty drastic schedule shift in September when my youngest starts kindergarten. And I find myself with different work hours. So just keeping that in mind. Summer is another huge ideal day shift that you may want to think about. And again, being proactive rather than reactive. It's something you could add to your map book. Woo! To think about, in May, June, before the kids get out of school for the year, what is your day going to look like? What's your schedule going to look like? All of those things. So on the podcast today, you know by now, if you've been following me for a while, that the YouTube video is just kind of like the snippet and the podcast is like the meat of this episode. So on the podcast today, I'm going to be talking about my ideal day. I will walk you through, if you're curious, I love this stuff, but if you're curious what I do, what my ideal day looks like, I will be sharing that over on the podcast. So be sure to check it out. Just search What's the Plan? Personal Growth for Busy Moms on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And that episode will be posted today. And then make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, because next week we are going to be doing my favorite thing, and we are going to be making a plan. I am so excited. I will be walking you through my plan process, how I go from A to B, in sort of just like my own nuanced way that maybe makes sense in your brain, maybe doesn't, but just another tool to add to your tool belt here. So friends, thank you so much for taking time to tune in today. I really appreciate it. If you want to leave me a comment or shoot me a DM, I would love to chat with you to know what your ideal day looks like. Feel free to ask any questions about backup socks or why my husband breathes too loud during his workouts. I'd love to chat with you more. And as always, I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.